Good morning, everyone. Justin Smith here, product specialist at Livegistics. You could call me Jay today, though, because the man sitting next to me is our CEO and one of our co-founders, Justin Turk. Justin, it's great to be sitting on this brand new couch we have here in our office.
Thank you, Jay. Good morning to you, and good morning to everyone out there as well.
Over the next hour or so, we're going to be covering 6 different ways to help save money in the back office. And as we go through those points, I want to make sure that you're keeping in mind that companies pay tens of thousands of dollars to hear the information that we're going to be sharing with you this morning. So please, turn your phones off and enjoy the time that we're going to spend together this morning. And Justin and I are very grateful because there are many things that you could be doing, but yet you have found yourself here with us, and we're grateful. So thank you. Some topics of conversation that we're going to be covering when we think about the 6 ways to save money, time, effort, energy in the back office. We're going to be talking things like setting up a project for a transparent audit trail, digital collaboration with stakeholders, field documentation, cost control management, invoicing, and last but not least, reconciliation. So before we get into those, I do want to spend a few minutes and allow Justin to kind of give some background of his experience and knowledge in the industry, because my background is very different. So Justin here, I would consider to be as an industry expert in what he does. And the cool thing is about our company is it wasn't just another software company, right? Like, our company was created on the foundations of construction and tech experts because of a lot of our leadership's background. So Justin, I'd love for you to share some knowledge of your background and experiences with our viewers.
Appreciate it. So that's really important. Construction and technology, leveraging the two of those for the greater good. So my background, grew up in a entrepreneur family in construction, the grandson and son of the owners of Turk's Paving, one of the at one point the largest minority-owned asphalt paving company in Michigan. Also a software developer by trade, civil engineering master's degree, construction engineering management. Spent 20 years professionally in the construction industry, and that's everything from wheelbarrowing stone on a golf course to negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts on some of the largest projects in North America. So my background is, in heavy civil is vast. I've seen every industry, everything related to it. From I've been a part of the DPS bond program in 2010. I was a part of the M1 rail project along Woodward. Played a part in all 3 of the casinos on the construction piece. Little Caesars headquarters, Little Caesars Arena. Supported a team out in Las Vegas for a stint. Been a part of some major projects. Been in a room with some outstanding people. Learned a lot about construction, not just about how we can manage it from the office, but also the impact it has to the guys in the field, what their experience is, what their vantage point is. So I would think I have to say, after having 20 years, and I feel old saying that, 20 years in the industry, I feel like I've got a good grasp on the experience and expectation of the people that we serve.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to be part of this company and learn, because my background not in construction. So it's a great opportunity, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So thanks for sharing that. It's really important, you guys. So I'm going to reiterate something I did already mention. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, companies literally are paying tens of thousands of dollars to have access to this information, right? So if you can think about it in terms of when a company hires a consultant, a consultant has experience in that industry, in that space, a company hires them to come in and help guide them, to provide information and structure and knowledge and wisdom to be able to kind of excel and at the end of the day, make more money. So with that said, our first topic of discussion, setting up a project for a transparent audit trail. Justin, what can a company do to do that correctly, but also in a way to help save money?
Great point. I think it's really important for us to understand the ramifications of not setting up a project for a transparent audit trail. Number one, if you did a Google search, you will find that the construction industry is the top industry for lawsuits in America. It's not healthcare. It's not manufacturing. The number one industry for lawsuits is actually construction. Why is that? Number one aspect of that is contract disputes. It's not related to injuries on a job site. It's not related to workman's comp, anything related to that. It is literally disputing a contract. And usually why it's a dispute in the contract, because people don't do a great job in setting up a project for a comprehensive audit trail, specifically in heavy civil. What do I mean by that? So I'm going to get into the details of why it's so important. So in the heavy civil industry, everyone has an idea of what it costs to do a project, at least from their experience. They look at it. Usually there's two indicators in construction, specifically heavy civil, that tell you how you're going to bid a job. It's labor, production, and material. Like, how much labor do I need to move X amount of material? That's really what it is, right? So when you take those two things and you correlate them together, it's really important that you take what you put into an estimate, meaning that if I'm going to demo a house, how many labor hours is it going to take? How much material am I going to move? Now, that information is in your back office. You set that up using some type of software. You might do it in an Excel spreadsheet. Back when I learned from my predecessor, he called it Yellow Dog, which meant that I learned how to estimate using a college rule yellow notepad. And that was the foundation of using all my math knowledge and whatnot to put a bid together. Since their software's gotten a lot more progressive, at the same time, it's the audit trail. It's really important to tie this back to your estimate. So when you're in the office and your estimating team, or you individually are setting up the cost of a project, how much it costs you to do this job. You've already won the job. You're excited about this. Somehow you've got to transfer that information to the field. Now you've got to transfer it in a way that your field personnel understand it. So there's so many different indicators there, but field understand how much material am I moving? How much labor is it going to take, right? So everything that you translate to the field, whether it be the foreman, whether it be the labor on the job site, you need to make sure it's transferred, whether it be an Excel spreadsheet. Hey, when you demo houses, you have to demo 3 houses this week. And in those 3 houses, you should only have about 7 loads per house. Why is that important? Because along the way, you're going to start to see some patterns on how the job's going to progress, right? But in transferring that information, it's extremely important that you take all the complexity of what you do in the office and you transfer it to your field personnel in a simplistic way that it doesn't allow them to overthink the project, right? And it's all based on labor, production, and material. So whether we do that by an Excel spreadsheet, we use some type of software program, we want to start to set up indicators on our project that easily are identifiable for guys in the field. We don't want them to have to translate anything. All we want them to say is, hey, this project right here, it needs 7 trucks, or this activity right here, it needs 5 trucks. If I've got more than 5 trucks, I'm doing something wrong. If I've got less than 5 trucks, I'm doing something right. Make it as easy as possible. It sounds complicated. It's really not, but you have to be intentional about that process and making sure that the people in the field are following up specifically how you set it up for your estimate when you bid the job. Make sense?
Yeah, no. So that brings up a great point. You've made comments, over the last several months that there are some incredible construction companies out there, but they don't know how to make money.
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot of things slipping through the cracks. There's, if I'm thinking of an estimator, right, their job at the end of the day is to estimate the bidding of the job, but ultimately at the end of that job, to make sure that the company made money. Correct.
Correct.
So with setting up projects for transparent audit trails, right? Like, so it's an upfront thing, but it's also used for a longer term progression, projecting how things are looking in the future, things that we could do better.
Absolutely.
Areas of opportunity where money's maybe, getting completely misused, labor's getting misused.
You're perfectly going on the right line. So one of the things you have to understand, especially when you go into the ground, if you talk to any developer, you talk to any project manager, any superintendent, anybody that's involved in new development of a project, the biggest liability on any project is there until you get up out of the ground. Because whenever you open the ground, you have the unknown. Now, you think you may be in an environment like in Michigan, we're heavily in clay, right? If you go out west, you may think that you're going to hit more rock. Those are assumptions that we make based on what we've done, experienced before. But until we actually put a bucket in the ground, we have no idea what's going to be the reality there. So think about being in the most uncontrolled environment possible in construction and providing control mechanisms to make sure that you have guardrails to know if you're making money, if you're not, right? So you want to put as much control leverage against the uncontrolled environment as possible. And that's what we're talking about with the audit trail.
All right, very good, very good. And so next topic here, so digital collaboration with stakeholders, right? So if I'm thinking in terms of, depending on the project, you could have anywhere from the owner of the project all the way down to laborers, truck drivers. But what's that look like from a standpoint of how can a company improve the processes in their back office when it comes to digital collaboration with all stakeholders involved in projects?
So this one is really related to change management, and the construction industry is very reactive for the longest amount of time. And anybody that walks into this industry that's new and says, man, we do a lot of things that the rest of the world isn't doing, right? So when you decide that you want to be a lot more digital in your efforts, it's important that you engage the people that you work with on a regular basis, because the one thing that you want to do is fight against as much of these old practices as possible while you're trying to transfer your office to a more digital process. So think about it this way. I want to start going as paperless as possible when it comes to my project management sector of the project. For that to happen, I've got suppliers that may be mailing me invoices. They may be faxing me information. People still use fax machines. So your key stakeholders, make sure that you say, hey, on this project, email us all the invoices. I know that sounds ridiculous. Hey, instead of you sending these by mail, scan it, send it in a scan and send it to my email, because now we're telling our accounting department that everything's going through our accounting at livegistics.com email, so that they know that all their invoices are coming through a PDF, and we can figure out better ways to use those invoices in the office to go digital. Hey, instead of sending me backup, send me an Excel spreadsheet of the items, and let's see if we can cross-reference those a little bit better, right? It starts with in the civil space, in construction. It is the reason it's so complicated for the most part is because there's so many interdependencies for so many companies to work together. Like the idea that a civil customer or a concrete customer can just do everything on their own, it doesn't exist. They collaborate with so many different suppliers. You need to make sure that the ones that you consider key stakeholders, you're telling them that, hey, change management, we're not going to do the things we used to do. We're going to start only accepting XYZ through email. We're going to start only accepting XYZ through an FTP. That sounds old. The other part of that is accommodate those companies, right? When you know that there's a large files, set up a Dropbox account, right? Like setting up a Dropbox account and giving a link to your drawings so that they can be a projects working with you. Send a link so they can upload documents that are larger files. Accommodate them, because sometimes email doesn't allow that to happen. If you really want to go digital, you want to go paperless, understand that there's a lot of different variables that are outside of the doors of your office. Take those into account and communicate those expectations. Start with your key stakeholders, though. Don't tell everybody. Everybody's not going to get on board. But the people that you do business with on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, let them know, hey, we've done business for a long time. We're trying to do things in a different manner. Make sure you're sending me your documentation in this format.
It's wild to me that in 2022, how much paperwork is involved in a single project on a job site, whether that's actually on the job site or in the back office. So question, go ahead.
It's the Wild Wild West.
It's crazy. It's wild.
The construction, really you might as well bring your cowboy hat and your cowboy boots, because that's what this industry is now. We've gotten a lot better than where we were, but it's still, you walk into some places and you realize that we still have a long way to go, which is exciting because we can all grow, we can build.
Yeah, heck yeah. And a huge area of opportunity for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, so kind of this brings up our next point here. So when we think of field documentation, right? So a lot of moving pieces, and I'm not just talking about movement of material. There's a lot of people moving, a lot of different type of construction vehicles, equipment, etc. But specifically to field documentation, right? So if you can imagine, and you know this way better than me, but when I went to my first job site and I'm seeing all these pieces moving and all the paper and the documentation attached to all this material, I was, again, I'm going back to the comment of just, it's 2022, a lot of paperwork involved. So when it comes to field documentation, how can a company improve their processes, save time, effort, energy, and obviously, be able to reallocate monies to other places to grow their business?
Great point. This goes back to number one we talked about on this list, and this is an extension of number one. Really important to understand the difference. Setting up a project with a comprehensive audit trail is based on the assumptions that you made when bidding a job, right? You got assumptions. This is how we're going to build a job. We go out and do it. We're in the most uncontrolled environment in construction. We get into the ground. The number one benefactor of that is change orders. Change orders are just a creature of habit in construction. What does that mean? For those that don't know, You bid a job. You have a scope of work. You put a bucket in the ground. That's different than what I was told it was going to be. I've got a change order. That's a change in the scope of the project. This is where we talk about field documentation, because not only is it a change in the scope of the project for you as the contractor on site, it's a change in the budget for the owner of that project. It's a change in the budget for the general contractor, for the construction manager, when they have to explain why the price changed. Field documentation, field documentation, field documentation. And this is specifically when you're talking about understanding that you are in an uncontrolled environment, and as much information that you can document on a project to justify why your price changed, the better you are, because I'm telling you, you're going to have to justify it. I don't care how big you are, how small you are. Somebody's going to say that cost too much, or it should have been included in your scope of work. You have to teach your personnel in the field, not just, hey, take pictures. Give them a proper tool to document changes in the work, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be the ones in litigation. They're not going to be the ones fighting a seven-figure claim. You are, as the business owner, and you want to make sure you prepare your field personnel to combat that with a proper system that documents changes that happen on a project.
If I'm hearing you correctly in lame terms here, kind of cover your butt.
Cover your butt.
Okay, got it.
You said butt.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad you said next to me, because I probably wouldn't have said butt. So if I'm thinking of here, actually a question for you. So if you were to start, let's say, your own construction company right now, like today, right? Okay. And if you're thinking in terms of field documentation, what would be one thing that maybe you would do immediately as a new business owner to help with managing all of that documentation? Or maybe I'm asking the question wrong here, but like, what could a company do to have immediate change in this process of when it comes to field documentation? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Is this where I tell them they should buy Livegistics?
I mean, that's a good answer for sure.
Good answer. Yes. So the reality of it is that you need to invest. When I say invest in the system, invest in software. Invest in a system that allows you not only to manage your operations in the field against that audit trail, but inspections, things that happen on a job prior to starting, and during a job and after. One of the biggest benefactors of lawsuits in construction is that nobody documented what the site looked like before you start. You think that would be something that's just ideal? People do it all the time. They don't. And when that doesn't happen and things don't come as planned, lawsuits happen. So it's important that you have tools in place that make it easy for people to document things. Now, I'm not saying go out there and say, hey, use my iPhone and take a picture and then send us a text and all that stuff. That's not a good system. And what we have in Livegistics, obviously, is a very comprehensive system that lets you maximize your value for the audit trail and document how you're doing against your estimate, but also add inspection notes. Also go in and do pre-planning and videotape or coordinate what the site looks like before I start a project, what it looks like after. This is really important information when you're talking about documenting the before and after a project. It can save you not thousands of dollars, it can save you millions of dollars spending 5 minutes walking around a job site. I remember I used to institute this with our foreman. Hey, take your iPad, walk around on Dropbox, upload these images to the project, because when it's time to talk about how that project line stopped and started on somebody else's property, if you don't have video of it, you own it.
So I'm thinking here, so we're on one of the largest projects in the United States right now. And when I was just down there visiting, having a conversation, and they literally spend an entire day once a week taking drone footages, taking pictures, documentation, and that's all they do for that, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, because of the reality is, in the event that something does get challenged or pushed towards litigation, they have all this facts and data to be back up, and again, it's covering their behind, making sure things are in the right order, in the right place, going as it was originally designed to go. So
it's funny. 20 years in the industry, when out of college and early 20s, getting into the industry, nobody took pictures, nobody did video. They went out and worked, and what they start to realize is, man.
What, did you have one of those old cameras with like the smoke?
We get underneath the curtain and we take one picture, keep walking, take another. We actually had one of those camcorders that we put the videotape in.
Oh, you had it on your shoulder?
This guy's funny. He's really funny. No, nobody did it, and they started to realize that this is costing me a ton of money. it is costing me not only headache, time, but I'm losing money because I'm simply not documenting what's happening on my job sites. Really important item.
And I don't know if this was done by design, but we did a really good job outlining this thing, because that brings into it our next segment here when it comes to cost control management.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm a construction company, I'm trying to figure out ways to, whether it's cut costs, reallocate costs. What are some ways that a company can start doing so, and at the end of the day, save some money?
Great question. And it is funny how this comes in order like this. So when we talk about cost control management, and we transfer from field documentation to cost control, let's go back to what we said earlier, is that a lot of times, and this is no disrespect to the industry, I spent 20 years in the industry, and I'm telling you, I talked to a lot of people. People don't know if they made money or not on a project many times until they count up all the pluses and the minuses after the job's over.
How long does that typically, sorry to interrupt, how long does that typically take from your experience after a job is complete to figure that out? Are we talking
finalize it? We're talking weeks. We're talking
okay.
3 to 4 weeks after. You assume everything's up to speed there. It's all accurate. It's all in your database. You can run a report. Hey, these are the final numbers, right? But what we have not done, and this is where I talk about, one of the reasons that Livegistics is here, while we talk about it, being more proactive than reactive, learning from our mistakes, learning from our wins. One of the things that I've always talked about in the construction industry, you'd be surprised what people can do when you tell them how much money they can spend. That sounds, what are you talking about, Justin? I'm telling you that I've done projects where going into the project, we were doing the project below cost, right? Okay. And because I knew how much money we had to spend, I built the project in that manner, and we actually made money, right? Okay. Misconception here is that the guys in the field or the project manager does not necessarily know the exact cost of the project, and they're not actually matching that to the production in the field. Meaning, as trends happen in the job site, sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes you realize that, hey, this item right here, I'm spending way too much money per unit. I need to figure out a different way to approach that, to make money or to make up money on a project. We're in the wild, wild west. We're in an uncontrolled environment. Hey, I'm calling my suppliers. I'm talking to my foreman in the field. I'm saying, hey, you're spending too much money on stone on the building pad. Are you sure you're only going 6 inches outside of the footprint of that building instead of 12 inches? Because that extra 6 inches is going to cost us another $100,000. I didn't know that. I just figured we go 12 inches because the blade is 8 feet. So when I cut 6 feet inside the building footprint, I'm 2 feet outside. I just tell them to keep going because it's quicker. Well, you're going quicker, but it's costing us another $100,000 in material. These things, I'm telling you, these things happen all the time because the guy in the field is thinking, how much time do I got? How much material is it costing? And if he doesn't have that information in front of him, he's thinking, hey, I'm being a rock star because I'm cutting this building pad in one blade.
The lack of information and then doing we'll call it a mistake, right? The $100,000 mistake of the wrong cut. But most construction companies have multiple projects going on at once. So if you can only imagine when those things, like multiple projects, multiple $100,000, we're talking sometimes millions of dollars. Yes. of just mishaps that could be easily dismissed or just not even happen from having the right information, especially going from top to bottom, easy access, transparent data and analytics.
We call it BAU. We call it business as usual, right? And if you talk to most people in the construction industry, they say this is what we're used to doing. It's business as usual. And if you looked at our Livegistics ROI calculator and you started to input what BAU actually is, it's costing you millions of dollars. That's what people don't realize. That business as usual is simply a way to lose money in construction that I've always built into my budget. That's what we're saying. When I take these things, when I don't take these things into account, and I just do what everybody's done before me, yes. And I just keep doing the same thing because that's how you do construction. I'm literally saying I'm okay with money walking out of the door because this is the way the practice has always gone. And we're here to say at Livegistics, hey, there's a ton of money you're losing because you're operating in BAU principles. Because the company before you did it doesn't mean that you have to. We have to be better. We have to be smarter. We have to use technology to make better decisions. That's what we're talking about right now. Being more proactive, identifying these mishaps on day 2 of a project instead of day 30, right? That costs you money. Now, you can be a hero if you identify it on day 15, right? But you can be a champion if you identify it on day 1 and you let your company know how much money they save on those 15 days by you doing your job better, right? Because before, if you found out an issue on day 15, you say, man, you just saved us a ton of money. Well, how much? How much did you save us? I have no idea until now, because now we're being more proactive than reactive.
Why? So I'm even thinking of some past experiences for me when engaging with businesses. Sometimes there's pain points, right? And it's costing them X amount of, we'll say $100,000 a year, right? And sometimes those companies are very comfortable with the idea that we're not going to fix that problem. We already know we're going to lose that money anyways, right? So they're going to continue on. So why do you think, specific to the construction industry, why do you think there is kind of that hesitancy to adapt change, to make something better, to improve that process rather than just continually to lose that money? Why do you think there's such like a pushback?
Jenga, right? And let me explain it's the Jenga mindset, right? What we think in construction is that I've got this puzzle pieces stacked on top of each other, right? And this is my company. And if I decide to make one change and I pull this piece out because this is change management, the whole thing may collapse. And that's not the reality. When you align yourself with the right companies and the right people, the right software, the right supplier, the right network of people that understand your industry, right? So change management is something that happens all the time. But we get really a lot of anxiety about it when we're talking about our business, because this is something that people have been doing for 70, 80 years. Their grandfather did it. Their father did it. They've been doing it, and hey, they're looking at the margin. We're doing okay. We are doing okay. But what is relative okay? What does that mean? What is that relative to? Because you are losing money. We're telling you that, hey, we're not Jenga. We're not pulling out this piece, right? This is not what this is about. We're actually reinforcing the foundation of your company. Like, we're change management that occurs in a moment's notice that onboards in the field, and they don't have any anxiety about how that thing looks, how it operates, how easy and functional it is. And now we're going to talk about some other things about how it impacts the office. It's going to be a sense of relief for them, because what they were doing before, simply they were just drowning in paperwork. And it was okay that they were working 70 hours a week, because that's what people in construction do, right? That's not the case.
So speaking of drowning in paperwork, we're gonna transition here to invoicing. Something that we focus on a lot here at Livegistics, and I've seen firsthand what invoicing looks like from a company that's been doing their business a certain way for the last 30, 40 years. So when it comes to invoicing, Justin, how can a company improve that process? And there's probably a lot of different ways, but how can it help the companies save a lot of time and, of course, money?
So I'll tell a story about a company that
it better not be my story.
It may be your story. I don't know. Is it your story?
I don't know. We're about to find out.
We're about to find out. So there was this company, and they're a trucking company, and they've spent a lot of time in the industry managing tickets, because when you're a trucker, it's all you do. You manage tickets. Tickets are part of your day-to-day operation. If I don't get the tickets managed, I can't submit an invoice. I can't bill, right? So think about BAU. Think about the engine that you have to create to actually reconcile tickets manually, like to produce an invoice. Like, think about what that looks like. Think about the amount of backup that goes into that. And one thing that we're saying is that it happens because for one ticket to get processed, think about how many people have to touch it. Think about the person in the field that has to get it to some runner that gets it to the office, that gets it to the office, that gets it to somebody that sorts it, that gets it to a sorter that puts it into some type of accounting system that produces an invoice. So you had at least 4 or 5 touch points where there was an opportunity for loss, number one, and then there's time being wasted.
And a lot of labor.
And a ton of labor.
Yeah.
A ton of labor. And what we're saying when you talk about going digital, this is one of the things that we emphasize at Livegistics. One entry point for everyone to share. Right? We do not duplicate entry points, meaning that when it enters in the field people are telling the story as it happens. The information is seamlessly transferred to the people in the project management team, to accounting. Nobody's re-entering information. Every time you re-enter information, you've got the opportunity to introduce more errors. So the less you can enter information, the less likelihood you have for errors to pop up in your system, which means the less time you save.
100%.
The more time you save.
Yeah. I'm going back to your Jenga analogy, right? Like, you pull one out and it collapses. and then using a software, using a system and process that connects all of that much quicker. So you're not having that disruption. I know the change management part of things, but it actually almost makes people or the company connect better. So there's not that lapse of when you do make a change, there's not that tumble, right? Because
I just thought of something. Good.
All right.
So instead of people thinking about Jenga and pulling a piece out because you're talking about change management, think about Livegistics as actually taking Jenga already built, pouring glue over it, right? Because now instead of having these pieces that are each one can be pulled and connected,
some easier than others,
we're gluing it together because it's one entry point, shared information across an organization.
100%. So very close. My story is probably a little bit similar to yours, but I want to share this because my mind was I still think about this almost on a daily basis. So at one of our customers, there was this woman in the back office drowning in paperwork, spending anywhere from 12 to 14 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, right? If you could think of the labor costs, the time, effort, energy that woman was spending, filing through all that paper and putting it into their system. But on the flip side of that, think about what it was doing for the work-life mindset, the work-life balance, right? Like spending that amount of time, it's grueling. Doing invoicing is not a fun job. It's necessary for the business. But finding ways like Livegistics or another avenue to be able to streamline that and make things quicker. They have a system in place where her job is sometimes done within 4 hours.
Yep.
And so then, if you can imagine if there were 4 or 5 people doing this, you guys, they were able to either reallocate that labor to other places in the business and improve processes there, or sometimes companies have to make cuts. It's part of business. Or other times they were able to take all that data and make better decisions in other areas of business because it wasn't constantly being spent on just moving pieces of paper from this pile into a system and then wherever else they did with it. But so my point of this is it is incredible what it could do for your employees. If you're a business owner, for your coworkers, what it could do to the mind and just the work-life balance of just having better systems and processes in place to improve everything. I mean, I don't know.
It is. But it's a mindset shift. Like I said, people come into the industry thinking that they got to work a ton of hours, right, to get their job done. What we're saying is that, hey, obviously this is a hard work industry, right? This is sledgehammers. Is steel, there's bulldozers, there's excavators. You get it, and this is what it takes to get the job done. But those things we can work smarter, not harder on. Let's figure out those things so we can make everybody focus on the things that really matter, right? Which is making sure everybody's safe on the job site, making sure everybody comes home that same day. Those things really matter. We don't want distractions elsewhere. We don't want people stressing about taking work home. If we can eliminate those distractions and we can actually get better data to make better decisions about our business in one comprehensive failed swoop, then why would we not do it?
No, 100%. Yeah. No. Very well said, Justin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very well said, Justin.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you. So last but not least, I want to spend a few minutes here and talk about reconciliation. So reconciliation can mean a lot of different things to many people, but I want to be specific here to the construction industry. Help us understand the reconciliation process and how it can be improved to help companies.
Great question. So this is where we got to separate between invoicing and reconciliation. So invoicing, this is the process of actually going in and volume-based, connecting all these tickets to an invoice, sending it out for payment, right? We talk about reconciliation. When we go on digital, we're talking about I started the project and I said, hey, this is how much these things should cost. And I'm tracking it. I've got my cost control. I've got my digital collaboration. But now from reconciliation, I'm looking at this from a project management perspective, estimating perspective. I want to know, hey, I'm an estimator and I think I'm a very good estimator. How much did it really cost me to put the demo that building? Like, what was the material cost related to that? All that's done when you match your invoices to tickets that were created in the field, because the people in the field told the story. The invoice told you how much it cost. You merge the two of those together, we call it reconciliation. It's one of the most beneficial parts of Livegistics, of any system that reconciles your data, because now you're not just looking at estimates on how you assume they're going to go. You're actually getting projects and they're done. You're saying these were the assumptions I made on the last project. This is why it's called estimated. It's not an exact science, but I use my math and I use my experience to say that it's going to cost this much. My material cost was this much. Material cost is the biggest variable in construction. When I can hone in on those and say, hey, I was a little light in this one, or I was a little heavy here, I can make better decisions about my next estimate. And this is the power of reconciliation right here. When I actually, in accounting, match up all those invoices in a system that connects them to an activity in the field, I know exactly how much it costs. I know exactly how much it costs on the day that it rained. I know exactly how much it cost on the day it was 80 degrees. I know exactly what it cost in the month of September. I know exactly what it cost when my trucking company shorted me 15 trucks that day. There's so much you can do with the data, painting a picture on how I can be better and make better decisions about my business moving forward. That you only get that when you follow steps 1 through 5, right? And then you get to step 6. And now I'm sitting in the office and I'm saying, all right, project's over. What did we learn? How can we get better? Let's look at the reconciled data and figure out ways to improve our processes, ways we're already winning, and let's pour gasoline on those. Let's talk about these ways we can improve our process, figure out a better way, pour gasoline on that.
So with that being said, I told our viewers and listeners that this wasn't going to be an hour-long sales pitch, but I would be doing a disservice here if I didn't bring this up. So a lot of the things that we talk about, there are other tools and resources out there to improve the quality of the business, make companies more money, right? Yes. And obviously reduce paperwork in the back office. But when it comes to specifically reconciliation or invoicing, control management, field documentation, digital collaboration with stakeholders, and setting up projects for a transparent audit trail, Justin, part that I do want you to touch on here is you obviously spent a considerable amount of time in the industry and you saw these things, some of the things we chatted about today that just were not happening, right? You saw a better way to do business, which is why you created Livegistics, right? So if we're thinking in terms of this again, this is going to be specific to Livegistics here, okay? When it comes to reconciliation, right now, the current process which you just described, how could a customer use our software to help with reconciliation and specifically invoicing as well?
Great point. So thinking about the way our software is set up, and it's very progressive in nature, right? Our software was designed to merge an industry that was heavy in paper, right? This is where we are today, but we want to go to a completely digital process. So when we talk about, I want to go through 1 through 5 to answer number 6. Right, so we talk about like setting up a project in a format that produces an audit trail. You can do that 100% digital. You can use a yellow dog. You can create those templates in our system, set you up for success. When we talk about digital collaboration with stakeholders, you can invite companies in our software to merge with you and be partners with you using the platform. We have supplier channels already to use our software. We've got transporters. We've got source suppliers that are already part of the network that you can collaborate with 100% digital. Or we accommodate, when paper shows up on a project, we accommodate you and allow you to upload that as well. We document all that information, right? We're heavy in documentation, making sure that your inspection notes, that anything that's related to a certain activity, you're able to input, make a seamless transition. Then we're checking on those costs. How much is it costing me per activity as it's happening in the field, live session? Our software, one platform, one of our 3 platforms, progressively does all of this in one channel. It's got multiple stakeholders doing all of this for you, right? We talk about the invoicing, how much easier it is to get the invoicing in our system. Instead of somebody spending hours at home going through invoicing, it easily makes the process seamless and digital in our software, even if you started with manual entry tickets, right? So when we get to reconciliation and it's time to look at all this data, because what happens a lot of times is that you got all this data related to the job cost me this, the job is finally over, did we make money, right? When you're able to actually hit one button and run a report, right, that not only produces a fully comprehensive audit, but it tells you, it pinpoints exactly how many dollars you spent on every activity. Now you have reached a point in your business where you are in control of your costs, right? You are in control of how aggressive you want to go after estimates. You are in control into how aggressive you want to bid jobs. You're in control on what type of demands you have to make on your truckers, on your suppliers to meet the objectives that you have in that reconciliation table. You're having different conversations about your business because now you have information that either justifies that you're doing a good job or it disputes it, right? And you can't make that any more simpler than using Livegistics.
I love it. I think the beautiful part of what we do, one of my favorite things, is the real-time data and analytics that we provide, all the metrics. Because if I'm thinking, I'm not a business owner, but if I'm thinking as one, right, the ability to have conversations and make decisions on the fly, to fill in gaps, make better choices, spend money better that day, allocate different labor, materials in certain areas, right? Like right now, if you're not using some system or a software to do that, sometimes you're going days or weeks before you're even aware that there may be this problem happening, right? So now if you could think about how much money over the course of the last several weeks, this issue, it's a lot of money. Yeah. And so like I'm just an advocate, you guys, of what we're doing here at Livegistics. The ability to have access to a lot of information that right now in the industry is archaic. It's beautiful. It's a lot of fun. But just for clarity, as much as we're huge fans of what we do here at Livegistics, there are many ways to help your business. So Justin, before I close this out, is there anything else you'd want to make sure we add, or anything we forget?
Yeah. So being somebody that's been in the industry 20 years, I've worked with companies that were in every state in the U.S., and I've also worked with small businesses that are just starting out. And even I'm in an opportunity to mentor some people right now who are early in the industry and trying to scale. Everybody wants to win in this industry, right? So think about when I was in this industry 20 years ago. The administrative response that has grown this industry is uncontrollable. What used to be, 5 hours per project is 50 hours per project, what you have to do administratively, right? So when you're small, you're thinking like, okay, this is a strain, but I can do this on this project. I can have all this data. I can control this on 2 projects. But everybody wants to win. When that 2 projects becomes 10 projects, and you want to have your fingerprint on all of those, and you want to understand the key performance indicators, the KPIs that are telling me that I'm winning or I'm losing, I don't need to call every single person on a project. I can see it on my phone. I can see it on my iPad. I can sit at my desktop computer. Now we're setting ourselves up for success. A lot of times people think that, hey, I'm not big enough to use Livegistics, right? That's that misconception, right? The reality is that start small and incorporate data streams like digital processes into your business, because you can get miles ahead of companies that have been around for 20 years who are caught up in old practices. Because what it costs for them to do a job in the field, they don't know. They're guessing. They're basing it strictly on experience. This is a heavily experience-driven industry. People bid jobs based on jobs they did before. They don't get into the science too much. When you start to leverage data and get into the science of the job, math is everything. If you can use the science on the project small, and as you scale, you continue to use the science, you'll always win. Because math always wins. Right?
Numbers don't lie.
Numbers do not lie. Right?
Beautiful. that was great. I appreciate you sharing that last bit there. You guys, again, Justin and I are so very grateful, because you could be doing a lot of other things in life right now. But thank you for spending the time with us this morning. This was our very first. This is our first. Yeah. So we're gonna be doing more of these. No, definitely not our last. No. So we're grateful, and please stay connected with us. You can find us on social media at Livegistics Inc. If you have any questions, we'll make sure that you have our information. But you can email us at any time. Give us a call. We're in the Detroit area, so if you're in our neighborhood, we're neighbors. We'd love to see you and meet with you and learn more about your business. And if there's an opportunity to help, we would love to have that conversation. So until next time, signing off.
Thanks for having us.